Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition.
It's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
For your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment I wake up till I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You've led me through the fire. In darkest night, you were close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best star, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light. Be thou my wisdom, and thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and I thy true Son. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one. Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance now and always. Thou and thou only, first in my heart. High King of heaven, my treasure thou art. High King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joys, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of all. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of all.
Good morning, Crosspointe. We are so glad that you're here, and we have a few things to let you know about that are happening in our community. Our next parenting lab on May 7th will be a discussion around the topic of raising compassionate kids. As a parent, it's fun to dream about your child growing up and imagining all the great things that they're going to do in the world. But in reality, most of us actually just want our children to grow up to be kind, empathetic, caring people. Children are wired for compassion, but what are we doing as adults to nurture that? As we're headed toward the lazy days of summer, we might find ourselves with more capacity to focus on our kids' hearts and create some rhythms in our families that strengthen compassion. On May 7th, we'll gather online with our questions, our concerns, our ideas, and our support for each other as we tackle this topic. Parents of kids of all ages can find out more and register at crosspoint.org/events. On May 4th, from 5 to 7 p.m., we'll gather together for dinner and our next community conversation at Crosspointe. You'll bring a dish to share that's either a special recipe, a family tradition, maybe it holds a significant memory, or it has a great story to tell, and you want to share it with others. Our teacher in residence, Jeff Chu, will join us and share a reflection on the power of food and community. You can find out more, including registration, at crosspoint.org/events. We have several upcoming volunteer needs in our community. We're planning a summer dinner club and need hosts. We're looking for leads for the Growing Together community garden. And we're looking for leaders to help with several Pride events in our area. All of these are great opportunities to get to know some other folks. So if you'd like some information and to find out more, you can reach out to Tirza or email community@crosspoint.org. If you want to partner with Crosspointe financially on all the many things that are going on in our community, including some of these things that were in our announcements today, you can find out more by going to crosspoint.org/contribute, or you can text crosspointenc to 77977. I'm super excited to let you know that we'll be holding baby dedication as part of the service next Sunday, April 28th. We have several families that we've been meeting with over the last month, and we're going to celebrate with them and with you next Sunday morning. All right, I think that's it. Thanks for being here, and thanks for doing this with us.
Good morning, everybody. I have a particular announcement and invitation I wanted to do before I got started with the message. I wanted to let you know that we have begun planning for Story Night 2024. If you've been to Story Night before, then you know what an amazing time that is. And the premise, if you don't know, is this. We meet locally to tell stories. We meet at Fortnight Brewery in Cary, and we listen to storytellers tell live, true, personal, 8-minute-long stories, and they're around a theme and without notes. They can be funny stories, they can be heart-rending stories, they can be why did you do that and then tell us all that you did it stories. The magic of them, though, is that you're in a room where stories are being told and listened to, and this connection sort of happens with all of us in that space to some degree or another. It's easily one of my favorite things I get to be a part of at Crosspointe. I know a lot of you probably feel the same way. So on June 25th, we're heading to Fortnight in Cary to do it again. And this time, the theme of the stories is going to be imposters. An imposter can be that you have been one or felt like one or feel like one. It can also be about a deception, counterfeit, getting tricked by somebody, finding out that what you thought was happening or who the person was, that's not actually what was happening at all. There's a ton of ways to tell stories on this theme, and I'm looking forward to seeing what our storytellers come up with. Now, here's the little change that we're going to make. And I admit this isn't a new concept, but it's new for us, and so I guess it feels to me a little experimental. We're going to find our storytellers for the June 25th Story Night by you all pitching stories to me. Those interested are going to pitch a brief story summary, and then we'll review the pitches and put together the night from there. So let me unwind this just a little bit. Maybe you've done some live storytelling before. Maybe you've even told a story at Story Night. Maybe you've never done something like this, but there's a little voice in your head that says, look, it's either this or bungee jumping. Like, I need to try something new. All of those categories of people and more are welcome to pitch a story. You don't have to be a professional. It doesn't matter how much experience you have necessarily. If your pitch is accepted, I will work with you and help you tell it. It'll be your story, but I can help you as much or as little as you need to make sure that when you tell your story, it'll come across exactly how you want, with a beginning, middle, and end and everything. I have done this in all the previous story nights, so that part's not new. The new part is pitching stories ahead of time. So here's what I'm inviting you to do. If you think that you might, even a little bit, might have a story that fits the theme of imposter, which I do recognize is so ironic of a theme for some of us who wish we had more courage to do this, that it's almost cruel, but lean into that. If you have a story that you think fits the theme imposter, then go to crosspoint.org/events and pitch us your story. Keep your pitch at 250 words or less. You're not telling the story there. It's just the highlights. And we're not judging your ability to write. Just explain the main ideas around what happened, the effect that it had on you, what you learned, how it shaped you as a person in some way, and then just hit send. And our team of crack scientists here at Crosspointe will collect them, ruthlessly pick apart your wording, your grammar. I'm kidding. We'll collect them and go through them and make some decisions about which ones are the best fit for the 25th. So please understand, you might send in a pitch and it won't be accepted for story night. That's okay. We're not rejecting you. I know that's disappointing, but just pitch another one. Pitch a different story. Maybe try again at a future story night. If it is accepted, I'll contact you and we'll have a talk about next steps to get ready for the June 25th event. Okay, so crosspoint.org/events. It's not time to register for the event yet. We're just collecting stories at this point. So pitch us your stories. If you don't pitch us your stories, then we just have to call it night, and no one's going to put that on their calendar. So pitch us your stories for story night, and we'll look forward to seeing what tales you all have to tell. Exciting stuff. Okay, speaking of stories, it was my senior year of high school, and wrestling season was coming to an end, so my career as a wrestler was therefore coming to an end. I'd wrestled since middle school. It was the only sport I ever did. I wasn't a superstar, but I had a winning record. Some years just barely, but still more wins than losses. Well, my senior year started off really rough. I spent a lot of time in those first few weeks thinking I was about ready to end my athletic career on a really embarrassing note. And one reason for this was this guy named Ron Steck. I wrestled against him at the very beginning of the season in a small tournament. He was from a school 3 or 4 towns over. He was built like a funnel. And he had these 2 angry action figure arms coming out of the sides. His face looked like he was in his 30s. Like maybe he was the coach of the team, which seemed unfair. He looked like he was a father. I remember seeing him on the far side of the mat and having to do this mental work of not letting his appearance get into my head. My dad always told me, it's the little guys that are more dangerous anyway. My dad was so wrong about this particular guy. The ref blows the whistle, and this guy grabs a hold of me, and it was under 45 seconds later, I hear the whistle blow again. I am pinned to my back. Neither of us had even started sweating yet. It was one of the fastest humiliations of my career. So this guy, Ron, had folded me like a shirt in front of a crowd and put me away, and I carried the shame and embarrassment of that for the next several months. And generally speaking, I tried to learn from the head game of it, because I'd succumbed to a head game in many respects. So I used it to increase my strength, polish a few of my best moves. But getting demolished by this guy, this human V, it stuck with me all season. Well, at the end of the season, at least in Ohio, all the schools, they wrestle at sectionals. And then the top winners from sectionals advance to something called districts. And I had made it to district championships the year before. The competition gets pretty intense at that level. And this year, only a couple of us made it through from sectionals to districts. Well, from districts, the top 3 in each weight class go on to wrestle in the state championships. So I get to districts. I won my first match there. I felt amazing. And then my second match happens. It's brutal. I lost. I was frustrated. Now I know I can't get second place. The best I can do is get third place and then squeak into the state finals. If I'm going to make it, I have to win this next one. So I walk up to the brackets that they have taped to the wall, and I'm tracing my finger, across the bracket to figure out who do I have to beat to make top 3 to go to state. And if I've done my foreshadowing work in this story as well as I think I have, then you know the name that was written on the bracket, the opposite for a line of mine. It's Ron Steck. And I almost wept. I mean, I had to beat Ron the next morning to go to state, and that wasn't possible. My coach, he was awesome, but he was in his early 20s. This was his first ever wrestling coach gig. He wrote me a letter that night and he put it in my gym bag. It said really nice things. It was super honoring, but he also told me that he was proud that I had come this far and that I shouldn't feel down about making it to districts and no farther. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, you're supposed to tell me that, you're supposed to lie to me and tell me I can do anything I put my mind to and all that, right? Anyway. The next day happens. I can't even eat breakfast. My stomach's in a knot. Inevitably, I find myself standing opposite this Ron Steck guy on the mat, this human wedge. And we shake hands, and the whistle blows, and off we go. And this is the district finals. And so there's thousands and thousands of people cheering for multiple matches. There's the lights, the energy. I just decided I'm going to dial everything to 11 and just see what happens. Well, I survived the first of 3 periods, and I'm exhausted. And by the end of the second round, I've got nothing left, but I look at Ron, and he looks emptied out too. More importantly, I am up by 1 point. All I have to do for this third and final period is not leave any doors open for him to score on. Don't try anything stupid, and I'll have him. And the next thing I know, there's 30 seconds left. I can hear him growling in frustration. He's trying everything. I'm not scoring, but neither am I letting him score. And the ref actually warns me that I'm stalling. So I'm trying to make it look like I'm really putting in effort, but I am playing it so safe. I just want to run out the clock, and 20 seconds left. And Ron is like this furious bear, and I'm a stubborn turtle that won't come out of his shell. 10 seconds, 5 seconds, and the whistle blows, and I won. I beat Ron Steck and advanced to the state championships, and Ron Steck's career, as far as I could tell, has ended. And the crowd goes wild, and they were probably going wild for one of the other matches, but who cares about that? And I'm realizing in this moment, I guess I'm that age where I'm looking back and saying, well, those were my best years, and it was all downhill from there. I don't really think that, but yes, I still have this in a box in my closet. They put my name up on a banner at the school. I think to this day there's a plaque on the wall somewhere. That's what I'm told. I've not seen it. So I did it. I won. I beat this guy. The underdog story. I like this story. It makes me feel good to remember it and to tell it. It's the kind of story anybody would like to tell. I mean, among other things, it's an underdog story, and those are our favorites. The stories where somebody who isn't the odds-on favorite comes back and wins. It's the Karate Kid, it's the rebels in Star Wars. Any other story about the loser coming back to make the winners lose. We love this story. We find all kinds of ways to tell it. We even know how to turn the story of an apparent loss into the story of a kind of winning. And parents do this all the time. We root for our kids to win at the t-ball match, and then when they lose, then it becomes, can you be a good sport? Can you be the better person? Shake hands, compliment the winning team so that at least the child can win at virtue. I mean, who is more evil than the other team who won the game, but then they're also rude? They're not good sports. I mean, at least my kid knows how to be respectful. My kid wins. We love winning. And we're really good at finding ways to win that highlight how others didn't win. Others lost. And this is perfectly reasonable and in many ways good. Some of the most important lessons I have learned in my life have come from victory. But other lessons, it's not been victory, but from the way I used the pain of disappointment and loss as a teacher. Like I won in that way. Winning is great. It's often even good. I just ran a race last weekend, and I had no moral qualms about beating as many of the other runners as I could. My only issue was that everybody that finished ahead of me cheated. But some people are evil. What can you do? Here's what I'm hoping to inspire us to think about today. In games, there is a winner, there's a loser, or a winner and many losers. I'm not smart enough to uncoil game theory in economics or do a John Nash impression. Suffice it to say, we can become more aware that what we call winning outside of games, what we call success or pursue under the banner of being successful, raising successful children, having a successful civilization, it requires others to lose. Those others can be people we don't like anyway, who don't deserve success. They can be foreigners who should succeed on their own turf because we're winning here. Ethnic or religious or philosophical others, sinners, political opposites. They can even be people who won't be born until the future. All too often, what gives us a sense that we are winning, succeeding, achieving, it requires somebody else loses. And we just have to be good with that. We maybe even need to celebrate that. And we come by these thoughts, these sentiments, honestly. I mean, survival of the fittest, the mechanism behind evolution, is based on who wins and who loses in a given space. There's far more collaborative energy in the natural world than we realize, but generally speaking, the way a species got here today is because they benefited from another species losing. So we won by default. Evolution says in broad strokes that you and I are descended from those who won by not losing. It's in our genes to find a way to make sure it's someone else who loses, not me and not us. And it's in our values to find a way to make it so that the others didn't just lose, they're bad. We're the good guys. We won, the bad guys lost. So we aren't just a people conditioned to find a way to win, but also to understand that winning is fundamentally good. Losing, therefore, is bad. Evil loses. Good wins. So I want to tell you another story. I suppose this one's also about wrestling, but not in the same sense. There's no spandex in this one that I'm aware of. It's the story of Jonah, which you may or may not realize is, among other things, a comedy, right there in about the middle of your Christian Bibles. And it's not accidentally a comedy. It's intentionally a hilarious story. There's a man named Jonah who God tells has just been promoted to prophet. Jonah is told to travel to Nineveh to preach repentance. The turning away from sin in thought and attitude and action, or terrible things are going to befall their city. So Jonah says, sure. Then he gets on a ship and he sails in the opposite direction. Why? Well, the timing of the story of when it's being told is important. Nineveh, at this point, is the capital of the Assyrian Empire. At this point in history, it's the biggest city in the Assyrian Empire. It's the hub of not only a completely different culture than Jonah's, but it's antagonistic. These are the enemies, some of the enemies to the Jewish people. They are, simply put, a dangerous, hostile presence to the lives of Jewish people, both because of their completely foreign beliefs and customs, but because their power, they're a superpower. So God has told Jonah to go into the capital of a global superpower and say, God said stop it or you'll be overthrown. So Jonah dips. He buys a ticket to Tarshish. It's in the other direction. So he's on this boat and it's sailing across the sea and this terrible storm comes and the crew is like, what's going on? There shouldn't be any terrible storms this part of the year. This is a bad omen. We must be carrying cargo we shouldn't be carrying, and they start tossing cargo overboard. Well, Jonah knows it's him. He knows that it's God rocking the boat, and so he finally admits it and he says, it's me. I'm supposed to be going in the other direction, but I don't want to because it's the last thing I want is for all those terrible people to change. And the crew is like, you idiot, you can't disobey your God. You know what this is going to do to us? And they toss Jonah over and they make an offering to Jonah's God. The storm stops. Jonah is thinking, I can't believe I'm out here in the sea with a robe on. It's hard to swim. God sends this huge fish, the Dag Gadol, and it swallows Jonah whole. And the fish was like, kosher. And Jonah lives inside this giant fish for a few days, which the fish, by the way, is first referred to in the Hebrew language as a male, and then right after is referred to as a female. Finally, Jonah is singing a little worship song inside the gut of this giant animal, and it essentially gets across this idea. The lyrics of the song are sort of this, gee whiz, I'm still alive in here because of you, God. I'll do what you said. I'll do everything I promised to do. So this giant fish, which has been swimming to Nineveh this whole time, apparently, pukes Jonah out on the beach right there at Nineveh. Whole bunch of Ninevites see this apparently, so their attention is gotten. And Jonah, who I assume does not look or smell like the kind of person you would revere as a diplomat from a foreign nation, this Jonah walks through Nineveh saying what God told him to say, that they are 40 days away from ruin, so they better comply and repent or else. It works. The king hears the message, and I'm sure the witness testimony of Jonah arriving in a giant barfing fish probably added heft to his message. The king declares that everybody in the city and all the animals are going to enter into this ritual of repentance. They all dress in sackcloth, even the farm animals. Everybody's covered with ashes, bringing themselves low to visualize that they're going to change their ways. They're going to stop being such a violent, arrogant people. They all fast, no food, no water, everybody, all the people, all the animals, they shut it down. God sees them do this, and God changes God's mind. Says, okay, never mind. I'm not sure if you're aware of that in the Bible. At several points, God does this. God says, you know what? Never mind. So Jonah sees that they're spared, and he's like, I knew it. God, I knew you were going to do that. You're always so merciful and compassionate. Ugh, I could just shrivel up and die right here. So Jonah storms out of town. God makes a little plant grow to get Jonah out of the sun so he's not so uncomfortable, and in case this will help Jonah not be so grumpy, which is hilarious because God just put him in the acidic digestive tract of a giant sea monster for 3 days, but now God is providing a magic shade plant because the prophet is having a tantrum. So Jonah does cheer up a little bit, but then the plant dies the next day, and so Jonah's mad again, and I guess that means Jonah intended to live under this shade plant long term. So he's angry again, and God says, is your anger doing you some good? And Jonah's like, yes, it is. I'm so angry I could die. So God hands him a Snickers and says, you're all worked up over a plant dying, but I'm not allowed to be concerned for hundreds of thousands of human beings and animals because you prefer them categorized as the losers, as destined for loss. And then the story just ends. That's it. It doesn't say that they convert to any new faith or anything like that. It's just Jonah and the Ninevites, and the credits roll. That's it. It's perfect. I hope you'll go read it today. It might take you 8 minutes to finish it. It's the story of a main character who is furious that the bad guys get to participate in the win. The story of a religious guy who can't stand the thought of God lifting up everybody, of making it easy for everybody to share in good things. I mean, how can there be such a thing as good things unless there's bad things with which to dependably contrast my good thing? How can we be special if everybody is special? I mean, everybody gets a participation trophy now, right? We hate that. So then Jesus, centuries after this story is written, read this story countless times growing up, you can be sure. He finds himself in a very interesting position one day. There's this text in Matthew that reads, then some of the scribes and Pharisees said to Jesus, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. But Jesus answered them, an evil and adulterous generation asks for a sign. Keep in mind, this is some strong language, but this kind of language, it sounds harsh to our ears, and it is. It's a bit colorful and edgy. But this kind of speech between teachers who often respected each other is actually pretty common. So it's a cultural, contextual thing. An evil and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. You get one sign. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the sea monster, so 3 days and 3 nights the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth. So Jesus says you get one sign, and he's using an immediately recognizable image of a prophet undergoing something awful, but then will be witnessed as coming all the way through that awfulness 3 days later, which means the witnesses that they're also being compared to the witnesses in the other story, which was not a compliment. And then Jesus wraps it up like this. The people of Nineveh, of all people, will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it because they repented at the proclamation of Jonah. Like, they repented at the proclamation of a really terrible prophet. And indeed, something greater than Jonah is here. Of all people, it was you. You thought that they were the villains. Of all people, the losers, the people you think were the losers, they were the ones brought into the fold to stand with the judge, not you, them. The people you thought existed solely to provide a them in the story so that the story could be about you, the winners. Those are the folks who will stand in judgment over you. Oh, and by the way, something greater than Jonah is here, because I'm not the main character in a comedy. I'm actually standing here inviting you to change. So Jesus says, I'm going to give you one sign, and then references a story where there's really no winner. Not the main character, not the villain who decides to stop oppressing other people. The one sign Jesus gives isn't about victory. It's about God's apparent tendency to want to bring up everybody. The people you thought were the villains, terrible prophets, he wants to bring up everybody. And that's only bad news for those of us who can't understand the value of something unless it's scarce. Unless it can be won by an us or a me and lost by everybody else. This Sunday, for many Christian traditions, being the fourth Sunday of Easter, is called Good Shepherd Sunday. That is rooted in something Jesus is quoted as saying in the 10th chapter of John, where he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who doesn't own the sheep, when he sees a wolf coming, he leaves the sheep. He flees. The wolf snatches the sheep, scatters them. The hired hand flees because he's a hired hand. He doesn't care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and I'm known by my own, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep, which are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will hear my voice. They will become one flock with one shepherd. See, it's funny how we think of other flocks, and we wonder, who is that? Is that the people we met on the mission trip? Maybe it's aliens? No, it's you. We're the weird other flock. Often the ones telling others, you can't be us. You can't do that or be, and then also be in the flock. If you listen closely, you can hear Jonah saying, shut up. Didn't you read my little comedy? You're the other if there has to be one. You're the other flock. Jesus isn't trying to build a winning team. The Good Shepherd wants all the sheep, even the ones for whom we can't find a favorable Bible verse, to wake up to the inherent unity and oneness we have forgotten that is true. We forgot it in our quest for establishing winners and losers. We forgot that we are one. Our egos, and it's okay that we have egos because they've served us well in many ways. Our egos, our false selves thought Jesus was another way to win, the way to the win. But Jesus of Nazareth just doesn't provide any support for this notion. Jesus' ways, it's a path of descent, not ascent. It's a path of humility, of serving all others and disallowing our hair-triggered judgments to have any control over how we treat people or rank people. Even our Christianized notions of, well, sure, we might lose now, but only because we are going to win later. A lot of us think this way all the time, and there's plenty of reason to. It's a tradition to think this way and to sing this way. Yeah, things are hard now, but we're going to be the winners later. They'll see. But the Bible's thread, the way of Jesus, it doesn't really have any support for this idea. That's animal kingdom. That's our ego. The idea of pretending to be humble servants now because we know we have winning lottery tickets for after we die. We're actually the winners. Instead, the thread of this life that we're invited into, it says that what's to come, it doesn't involve our efforts or achievements. Like whatever is going to happen in the future, that's grace. It doesn't have anything to do with what we achieve or do or don't do. Grace just absolutely refuses to allow our false selves any support for this delusion of, I can achieve this. I can conquer this. This is a prize I can win. But that doesn't mean that we won't give it a go, does it? I don't know if you've seen these images yet online. I've seen them mocked a lot recently, but originally I saw them being used quite sincerely. You might find a few things notable about it. One, Jesus is apparently attacking Narnia for some reason, or maybe that's Denver, I don't know. And this is, of course, the malnourished first century white Palestinian Jew who hits the gym and the body waxer and then picks up his fur cape from the dry cleaner and then attacks Denver. And note that he's wearing a cross. And note that not only is he white, but so exclusively are his soldiers, which appear to be the U.S. military. And note that there are only white soldiers in his U.S. military. And note that there is no lamb, despite the fact that the book of Revelation says that Jesus is the Lion of Judah once early on, and then right away celebrates over and over that Jesus is the Lamb and is never called the Lion again. There's a lamb in the throne, according to the imagery. And we'll let it go for now that his doves are seagulls, because how could you fly doves when you're attacking somebody? And we'll let it go that the fighter jet appears to be a Boeing 737. The point in showing this, and there's so many other images I could actually show you, is this. This image represents a very serious problem. Not a new one, but a renewed energy problem. Those of us who are desperate to have a winner and have thought of Jesus as another way of winning, we want a winner to lift us up, to help us be the winners and help us make sure that the right people lose. Jesus of Nazareth doesn't do that, which has forced many of us to manufacture a different Jesus, all the same names and all the same words and all the same traditions, it looks like, sure, but a different Jesus entirely. And then we march our anxious and craving, greedy, narrow-minded, violent reflexes forward to conquer, to win in the name of Christ. It's happening in our government as we speak. Where very powerful, influential people believe that their Christianity is not a description of who they are trying to become like, but it's the name of their efforts to control other people's behaviors, their values, their freedoms, their bodies. Christian nationalism wants to force the name of Jesus on others under the illusion that that's what the Founding Fathers intended. That's what God wants. I promise to never be alarmist, just to keep your attention. I won't do that. But I have been feeling alarm about this for the past couple of years. A lot of people are feeling this, and a lot of people were feeling alarm before I got to it. There are many very influential people in leadership in this country with the support of millions of well-meaning, seemingly well-meaning Jesus folk who intend to conform and revert our society into the image of a previous world. Something like a theocracy, a Christo-fascist world where you are free to be happy under the rule of white men who use the Bible as a law code over the will and the ways of other people. I can't stress this enough. When someone says they want to lead a nation or lead a company, lead a school, lead a church in a way that, quote, honors Christ's kingdom, we have to listen and watch closely. Don't be passive about it, because that is often code words for what turns out to be a polite, smiling discrimination, abuse, bigotry, violences, the kind of thing that assigns crosses far more than it's willing to carry them for others. It's someone trying to win with Jesus. We honor the kingdom of Christ, if such a thing is even a thing, if humans can do that, by following Christ in the path of compassion and understanding, of descent in order to lift others, not ascent to the winner's circle over others. There's no such thing as a Christian nation, because historically it's the nation part that will steer the values. Followers of Christ don't see people as primarily foreigners or citizens of where they have happened to be born. They don't see human beings as either one of us or one of them, a threat to democracy, an invader. Whose eyes are we seeing one another with when we refer to human beings with labels like illegals or savages or invaders? Whose eyes are we seeing people with when we demand that they become what we are in order to receive our love and our respect and our inclusion and our blessing? Whose eyes are we using? See, that's nation, not Christian. That's the winner's circle, the self-preserving, cautious, and protective conqueror's table, not the table of Christ. Martin Luther King was addressing every single one of humanity's problems when he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Yeah, but us first, right? I mean, that's great, right? But first we take care of ourselves, right? I would say no. All of us, all the time. All the sheep, all the time. All of Nineveh and everybody back home. Even the them. Even you, even me. Let me be perfectly clear. You and I must, in a way that is as direct as it is compassionate and at peace, work against that which uses God talk and Bible language as a way of conforming other people to their preferences. That's what evil has always meant. It's just harder to recognize that that's what it is when you're more inside of it. No one claiming Jesus' name for what they are trying to make others do or prohibit them from doing gets a pass. The name of Christ, the way of love, serves people. It does not control them. It can't be used as yet another way to win and establish who loses. Now, lest we get the convenient idea that all of this lives at that grand scale of national or international politics, because it doesn't. That is simply an extension of what's true on a smaller level. We have to notice how this "I have to win" mindset affects us individually, personally. That's where it starts. Our egos are terrified of losing. Some of us, it's not that we're preoccupied with winning in a conscious way. We're terrified of losing, of being without, of being passed over, not getting credit for something, of being left out or being stuck, not having what we need to have, not having the right answers, being seen in an exchange as having to learn from somebody that I was supposed to teach. That makes me inferior to the person I was trying to establish that I'm superior. We're so preoccupied with not losing that even when we finally succeed, we get anxious because what can be gained can be taken away. You remember the game, what do we call it? King of the Hill? Where it's just a bunch of kids fighting for the peak of this hill. And as soon as you win, everybody's a competitor. As soon as you win, there's an anxiety that now you're going to lose. You're going to be torn off. How many of us have made that game our whole life, our whole theology? This is how the mindset of winning and losing, it can consume us, turning all our energy to how am I doing? Are my interests secure? Who's threatening me? Who's encroaching on me or on my interests? Who's becoming a competitor? And therefore I can't see them as a sibling, as a collaborator. To this mindset, Jesus said, whoever tries to save his life will lose it. I don't think he's just being poetic. I think he's saying that if we try to turn the children's game King of the Hill into a way of life with our money or our openness to new ideas, our shared resources, our willingness to listen, our energies and our kindnesses and our inclusions, our collaborations, we will not have lived, because that's no life for the human spirit at all. That's the animal kingdom. It's really uninspired. It's very popular. It's even celebrated. But it's uninspired and not good living at all. I think we know that. Robert Ingersoll said, "We rise by lifting others." And I won't pretend to know what Robert was thinking when he wrote that, but I think one of the things it calls forth is an awareness that if one of my own family members is doing badly, just one, I would never tell somebody else my family's doing really good. And so the eyes of Christ simply show me that my family is bigger than I learned. My house, it's a planet. What is good and bad for the Ninevites is good and bad for me, because we're all caught in the inescapable network of mutuality. And to that voice in us that says, well, if others are being lifted up, what about me? If others are being lifted, maybe they didn't earn it, and I've been working really hard, or they're wrong, or I'm right, or whatever it is. That little voice that says, what about me? Why am I being left out? Why are they getting to win and I'm not? To that voice we say gently, thank you for trying to protect us from what seems so scary, but this is the way of Christ. And it's always time for us to gently, and when we're ready, joyously, grow up and into it. So do everything you can to win your pickleball match. I mean it. Win your 5K. Dominate. Work hard to get the promotion. If those things are important to you, be a winner. And I've got my list. Do it. Win. Go win. I genuinely hope that you have victories in your life, especially in places you felt like you've lost before. Go win things. And be transformed in the renewing of your mind, in the totality of your lived life among other people who life isn't a game. About how others, they might be helped to succeed with you and you with them. How can I bring healing where I would normally want to bring victory, revenge, told you so? How can I bring recognition and belonging where I was before taught to bring a conquering, debating, defending spirit? How can I promote peace and kindness and inclusion where the incentive around me might otherwise be to self-center and protect and preserve and us first, and maybe even erase those who differ? How can I live in such a way where I am incentivized not by winning or by losing for now in order to win later, but by living my life at its very best, according to who I actually am, and by the peace and love of Christ radiating from me? May we find peace in being sheep for the Good Shepherd, willingly, joyfully bringing himself low for. And may we dare to believe that to be elevated from the role of sheep is to walk beside the one who seeks the well-being and blessing of all. Amen.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspoint.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspoint.org/care. And welcome home